right, there's our Thursday TikTok challenge song for this week. There's my entry. Let's get a bunch of them in this week. It's an easy one. If you don't know how to use TikTok, there's plenty of resources on YouTube to learn how. So that's the song. Let's get them in. And speaking of the Thursday TikTok challenge, you're going to hear next from none other than last week's champion, Mike Scotus, as we continue this conversation on synergy, and that an essential element of synergy is effective communication. So I've been getting a lot of feedback from a lot of you on this topic so far. Thanks. Keep them coming. And you're going to hear from Mike next. Mike, thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Bye now.
Hey, Greg, I wanted to get back to you, I guess respond to your request for thoughts on communication and that. I think you're taking the right tack this week and talk about, that's not just about communication, but it's about effective communication. And your story, an example about using assumptions, is a good example of non-effective communication. You know, the thing is with communication, it's one of the most used, but I think also one of the least understood words in our language. You know, people talk about the definition of communication, you know, where it's a process where people exchange information or ideas, and it's to impart or exchange information. Well, you know, the definition's fine, but it still doesn't really tell you when it's effective. I mean, the essence of effective communication is transmitting the sender's intended meaning to the receiver. The key thing is their intended message, and a lot of things can get in the way of that. I mean, from the standpoint of personal issues, things going on at home can interfere with the sender and the receiver. And, you know, you talk about the different forms of communication, too. I think that's an important thing to touch on, is because you can communicate a lot of different ways. You know, we've got social media, we've got face-to-face, we've got phones and emails and texts and all kinds of different things to do. But, you know, the words themselves are only count for 7% of the conveyed message. You know, the studies have been done that 93% comes through tone and body language. So if you aren't using something like a Zoom call or a face-to-face, you start to lose some of the effectiveness of the communication right up front. So one of the key takeaways is always, when you can, to gravitate towards that higher form of communication, face-to-face over a Zoom over a phone call over an email, and so on down the line, just from the standpoint of being able to convey the message appropriately. I said, you know, the difference between what the sender is intending and what the receiver actually understands is this thing called the distortion curve. We cover it in Leadership 102 and talk a lot about it. A lot of things can get in the way of that, that being personal biases, cultural things. I mean, look at the whole U.S.-China thing going on. A lot of it's just because even though we're talking at each other, there's not really a dialogue going on. There's an old saying that two monologues don't make a dialogue, right? But from the standpoint, the culture get in the way. People's effectiveness at speaking can also be the type of jargon or slang they use. You know, Cardone talked about not using language like that. So it's important also to use that higher form of communication, but it's also to find that common language. And, you know, a lot of work we do in Potent Nutrition, especially on the merchandising side, is to educate people in the vocabulary that we use. So there's a lot of things that get in the way of being effective in that. And I think to kind of sum it all up and, you know, to wrap that up is to say this, is that, you know, when you do communicate and when you do have those interactions with the receiver, the sender to the receiver, seek for understanding. And you mentioned this today, and you said use open-ended probes. It's exactly right. Don't ask somebody, hey, did you understand what I just said? More appropriately, you might just say, you know what, in your own words, can you tell me how you understand what I've just spoken to you? Or in your own words, can you restate what I've said? And those type of things can help really vet out whether or not somebody actually understood. One of the things that I try to do for merchandising means is watch people's body language when we talk about some of the marketing concepts and I'll watch the language, and then I'll ask people a question. Did you understand what he said? Can you explain what this term is? And a lot of times not. So the body language really and the tone can really give a lot of things away. So keeping that all in mind, just a few random thoughts on that. Have a great day.